everybody of Villains and Creeps. Today we have a special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Scott Suki. I am also the artist known as Fuck Toys. So I work on bootleg action figures and original artworks, expressed via the medium of action figures. Just kind of getting into that artist and art director and graphic designer for many, many years, and just have always been interested in the macabre and the otherworldly. Although admittedly a very large skeptic.
You also do digital work, and that's what element that we're going to add to the videos. I was going to go on X and show you some videos and see if you could determine if they were real or fake or not. And I don't know what's going on. Elon Musk is changing a tire on one of his trucks or something. Something happened, so we're unable to get that. So we're gonna mainly do ghost stories. Another thing, if you're familiar with Goblin Mob, my channel, he did the intro, the animated intro to the Goblin Mob logo. So I have that on the intro the to my videos. So that was pretty awesome that you did that. Getting into the first story, what would you like to talk about with the ghosts? We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I think we've been talking about this for a year, maybe. Has it been that long?
At least. I mean, it's one of those things that every time ghosts come up, I'm just like, I've got a couple ghost stories, in my pocket. Ghosts are weird for me. It's just like I've always been interested in the idea of ghosts and the otherworldly and the unknown, but I'm a huge skeptic. I would not consider myself religious or spiritual at all, so that angle, is never something that I would apply to my view of what ghosts, their existence or what they may or may not be. That's really not something I factor in. I'm just always curious of, hey, I believe that, people see things and hear things. I believe that I've seen and heard things, whether or not they are, figments of the imagination or there's something more to it. Uh, that's what intrigues me is, how can this be explained, or is there no other explanation? But it's not something that I'm have a firm belief in, that there is the existence of ghosts and such. It's always been something that I've encountered from time to time in my life. One of the earliest things that I remember uh, was, just growing up in the house we lived in. I was always had this feeling that, we had a little ranch house, as a lot of people, out in the Midwest have, and we had this one room that doubled as as added kids to the family, doubled as a kid's bedroom, and it really was just like a bonus room, in the back of the house. I never liked that room for whatever reason. I always got weird feelings that there was something in that room. Never had any proof as far as hearing or seeing anything, but always just had that weird feeling anytime I went anywhere near that room. There's something not right about that room.
So like the mirror just passing in the hallway of the room, you'd get that sense.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of feeling. But I would also have dreams, of I'm in the house and there is something in that room. Never was able to necessarily put any, form or anything to it, but, and again, is young kid, highly impressionable, we're talking dreams. But, always felt something was off in that room. Never had any proof. Family no longer owns the house or anything. But, it was one of those things that the rational side of my brain, even as a child, was always like, well, this makes no sense. There should be no reason for you to be wary of this room. But, there's always that curiosity of, well, why am I, very cautious of this room, and what about this room makes me feel like there is something else, in it, something unexplainable. Uh, I get around to, you know, junior high and high school, and we're sitting one day in art class, and we have, the big group tables, to spread out and work on. And there's this one girl who we'd known for years now. We'd gone all the way up through school with her, but never was really part of our particular little friend circle. But we're all sitting there at the same table one day working, and ghosts come up. Somebody said something about, oh, I bet that house is haunted, down the street. And She just out of nowhere just goes, "Oh, that house is not haunted. My house, however, is haunted." And we're just like, "What are you talking about? You are just in this standard little ranch neighborhood house, totally unassuming." And again, we're young. You grow up with that idea of that Disney idea of a haunted house is that creepy old Victorian on alone at the top of the hill, that screams haunted house. And we're just like, no, you're in a little ranch. You got neighbors on either side. You got normal, yard and everything. And she's like, no, no, no. There's an old man who's always been there the whole time I've been growing up. And she's just like, he doesn't do anything. We think he just, was an old man that lived in the house before us, before the family, and he watches over us. And we're like, what are you talking about? She's like, no, you wake up in the middle of the night and you go downstairs and he'll be down in the living room. And we just pay him no mind. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't harm anybody. He's just there.
So he was showing up physically.
He was showing up physically, according to this
Hmm.
girl. And so we're just, we're high school kids at this point. I think we were like, we had to be either sophomores or juniors. And we're just calling her out. We're like, oh, bull, no, no way. Come on. And she's like, no, I will show you tomorrow. And we're like, okay. So next day she comes to class and she's got a photo with her. And it's just a standard, it was, I don't know if it was Easter or whatever. If the family just decided, hey, let's take a family photo. So they went out into the front yard, house behind them. Uh, and they are just standing there for a normal family photo. They got like a neighbor to take the shot. And she's just like, now look and tell me what you see. And we're just looking, going, okay, it's just you and your family in the house. And then you realize they have, behind them, uh, a lot of ranch style houses, they have the big picture window, in the front. And as was popular in the 70s, 80s, 90s, uh, you know, everybody hung those white sheer curtains. It obscures the view of what's really going on inside, but lets a lot of nice light in and out. And curtains are drawn. There was a little bit of light you can tell passing through the house from like the other side of the house and the kitchen windows or whatever. You can see that. So there's a tiny hint of illumination, behind the curtains, but uh, not an amazing light or anything. You know, But we look, and there is, plain as day, an old man standing right behind the sheer curtains, just staring right out the window.
Hmm.
And we're just like, well, wait a minute, what is this? A, it's daylight. You don't never think that, oh well, haunted stuff only happens at night, in the
In
dark.
broad daylight.
Yeah. And somebody's like, oh, that's your grandpa. Well, when the other guy's sitting right there, he's like, well, no, I live on the other side of the block from her. I know she doesn't have grandparents right there living, and she's like, yeah, no, my grandparents are like other side of the country. They weren't down visiting, and somebody else is like, yeah, and even if her grandparents were visiting, what kind of jackass move would it be to take a family photo and make grandpa stay inside behind the curtains out of sight,
Hmm.
you know? And she's just like, no, that's the old man, that who would stay there and he'd just watch over the house. So, and we're kind of like, okay, let's again, could it be explained away? Absolutely. But we're like, there's weird things around this, even if it was staged and, it's was not something like, they staged the photo and we're taking it to the local TV news of, look, we've got proof, it was literally just a random out of the blue. We were talking about it. And she's like, oh, no, I've got a photo that has the ghost in the back. So it's little weird stuff like that, from relatively early age. Oh,
So I got a question for you. I don't know if this is too soon to ask you, but you
sure.
being non-spiritual, what do you believe things are if you're not spiritual?
Uh, I don't know, and that's where my interest and intrigue comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is that unknown that interests me. It's one of those things that I am still figuring out. What do I believe? If I have any solid beliefs around an afterlife or anything like that. Uh, uh, Afterlife, or be it other entities or such. That's why I'm interested. It's to, wanting to know, what am I looking at? What am I experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, I just have not been able to make that leap to go, oh, it's definitely got to be, you know, something, spiritual or something, otherwise. My family is largely very academic, growing up. I am technically, was a baptized Methodist, uh, when I was little. Uh, my parents tried the whole take the kids to church thing, and I think it was more of a uh, that's especially years ago, more of a thing where it's like, well, it's what's expected of a family, to go do is go to church every Sunday and that kind of thing. So I think they were very much more like, hey, not necessarily our thing either, but for the sake of the kids, and their development and blending in and whatnot, we'll give it a go. And it just never stuck for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, uh, so yeah, so my I would say my entire family in general is just, not the spiritual sort.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, so we've always from a young age been raised to question, what exactly are we, what's in front of us here.
I find it interesting that you have in your past you had like a room you had an off feeling about. I
Mm.
had the same thing when I lived in a house. And same thing, you look at it in the area, it's like this area doesn't seem like your typical haunted area, no haunted house, not old. The house wasn't old. My uncle built the addition that we stayed in because it was their house prior. The room in the back was my parents' bedroom, and it was a long hallway. And so it was my parents' bedroom. Next to that would have been it was our spare bedroom, our computer room. Back before we lived there, it was one of my cousin Marie's rooms. My cousin Rich's the room I stayed in. It was right across the way from the bathroom, and then it was the living room and everything. But this long hallway, man, I don't know what it was, but I just something irked me every time the lights were off, and I had to go get something. The hair on my arms would stand up. Even talking about it, I could feel like the hair on the back of my neck would stand up, and I just had an off feeling. And I never heard or I never saw anything until I moved back into that area when I was an adult, that we actually heard banging on the wall and just crazy stuff happened. But yeah, ever since I was like when I was a kid walking, I hated that hallway. I could not stand it. I hated having to go back there. If I had to go back there to get anything, the lights were off, I just kind of rushed. I just sprinted through it just to get through. That spare bedroom was always colder than every other room in the house. Doesn't matter. It could be 100 degrees outside, and that room was like 70. It was weird. My dad liked it because it was cool, So he worked graveyard, so he go sleep that back there and just relax. But it was always a weird thing, and we didn't know what the heck it was, what kind of spirit was there. We think it might have been one of Marie's boyfriends or something who died in a car crash or something. We have no idea. But when we moved in, when I was an adult, my brother was staying in that room because it was right out of high school. We were going to college. I stayed in the main bedroom. My brother stayed in that room. And then my friends stayed in my old room. Well, one night we're laying there and the dogs are freaking out. They used to sleep with us. One of our dogs who was really calm, never had any issues. She was pacing back and forth, staring at the door at about 2, 3 in the morning. And we felt banging on the wall. It was weird. I wake up and I talk to my brother later on in the day, and my brother's like, "Man, I slept like shit." And I was like, "What happened?" Like this little girl just kept talking to me all night, and I don't know if I was just drunk and I was hallucinating or what. But about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, this little girl just kept talking to me, asking me questions about just random things, and I couldn't fall asleep. And I was like, really? That was the same time that our dogs were going nuts. And I was like, right, because the door was really close. It was maybe like, geez, 5 feet away from our door. Wasn't that far at all. But yeah, my brother even said like I saw something, and like I know I like my brother, he drinks a lot. He gets off work, slams like 12 beers and goes to bed. That's what he used to do back then. But he even says like, man, I could not sleep for the life of me. I don't know what the heck was going on. Some little girl was just talking to me all night, and I'd say that was a trip. And I don't know if you ever had any issues of things like disappearing in a house, but that used to happen to us all the time at that house. And it wasn't just like my family, but it was my aunt. I'm pretty sure my cousins who live there now always have stuff that goes missing. My girlfriend at the time, she lost an emerald necklace, and she yelled, like physically yelled at something. It's like, give it back, give this back. And the jewelry box she opened up again and it was there. It was weird. Like it was kind of trippy. My cousin, she's real spiritual or clairvoyant, I guess, or she feels stuff. But she went to a medium or somebody to talk to, and supposedly she said she talked to my dad, and my dad said all the stuff that it was missing that we've ever missed, that's ever gone missing is in the attic of that house.
Hmm.
But she won't open it. She refuses. It's like I'm not gonna look. We found stuff in the basement because before, so the basement was more a crawl space under the house, and it just dug out, and that's where the furnace was and everything. Well, if you go under there and you start digging, you find stuff in the ground. You find like old football helmets, like from the 50s. You
Hmm.
find coins. You find just weird stuff. It's random, and like we don't know where any of that stuff's coming from. It's kind of a trip.
Well, I mean, with today's vintage market, I'd start digging again.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, I have a feeling. I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, but I feel like places hold energy as well, whether it's negative or positive energy. I think certain places, like Adam was telling me you're in South Carolina now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you ever gone to any of like the Civil War battlefields and everything, anything like that, like the old battlefields?
I haven't been to any battlefields per se, but I'm in Charleston.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've definitely, I mean, this is where a lot of that stuff all started. Uh,
Yeah. So there's a few places out there that hold energy, they say, and there's a few places that are like really haunted, or maybe even something kind of sprung up from the loss of life there, where it's something even primordial. If you or say, for instance, you can get like like what is it, like an elemental or something even older than the nation before
yeah.
anybody was here. Because the Indians all have tales and things like that, or places they deem sacred, or places that they deem evil, and there's reasons for that. I mean, they don't want like the Navajo want nothing to do with Anasazi. They don't want to go anywhere near those ruins. They deem them as a place that's not really sacred, but like, well, it might be sacred, but to them, it's basically like cursed land. So places like that, if there was a battlefield or something over the top of it and a bunch of blood was spilled, in a senseless war,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure, that hold of some energy. And people who are sensitive to that probably feel it a lot faster than like just normal people. You go
Yeah.
into a place and it's like something's not right here, something's off.
Yeah, I mean, it's Charleston's a weird spot. I mean, there's obviously a lot of, history here. I mean, Charleston's, an original port where they bring in the slaves.
Hmm.
So I mean, I work, uh, half a city block from the old wharfs where the warehouses stood, where they would bring the enslaved, and many instances they would they cram them into a warehouse waiting to be processed and sold, and they die in the warehouse. And the one instance, it was an unexpected really bad winter. And normally down here, in the winter, it might get into the typically 50s, 40s, and dip down to the 30s at night. but apparently they had a severe winter, and like the entire warehouse, everybody froze to death. So, and that's like half a city block from where I work every day.
Man.
Uh, so there's a ton of that kind of stuff, but it's hard to kind of sort some of that stuff out of what is truly potentially, I mean, obviously a lot of bad energy places, but what's a spot that might be haunted versus what is a place that somebody conveniently decided, oh, this is haunted because we're also a very, very, very big popular uh
Tourist attraction.
destination.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean we've got, all these tour companies coming through, and obviously everybody has their own take on a haunted tour. Uh and obviously a lot of stuff has some credence or story to it, but whether or not, you ask the locals, hey, is this place over here, we've heard the stories, but is it actually haunted in the sense that people are really seeing and hearing things? Or is it just a, hey, here's a great story for the tourists kind of thing?
More of a lore.
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, and again, I drive down the street and, we have, many historic plantations, and a couple, most of them are in like family trusts and that kind of thing. Uh, but there's one or two that are actually controlled by like the parks, and driving down the street, and it gets to the point that you're so used to it that you forget you just driving down the street to go to the grocery store, and you look off to the side, and here are these white little cabins, and those were slave cabins, and you kind of forget that, unfortunately, that you get used to seeing it every day and driving past it, and the fact that there's history there, and some very horrible history, where definitely horrible things happened, and people died and whatnot. uh so some of it's also, I think, just a frequency of how used to it are you, uh as far as whether or not something jumps out at you as, is this a place with noticeably bad energy? Is there something going on here that is unexplainable? uh you know so it can be a little tough here in Charleston to try and sort things out as far as that goes.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see like Fort Sumner down there and
Mhm.
just walk around that area just to see like what you feel or how you feel. And it'd be
Mhm.
nice to like be away from the tourists and everything. So we have a few places like that here. I mean, Fort Garland,
Mhm.
Bent's Fort, Pueblo. We used to be Fort Pueblo back in the day, and then they got wiped out or massacred by the Indians.
Mhm.
So there's stuff like that that's kind of interesting. And then, so little background on me, or my father at least. My father was a police officer. He used to be a juvenile detective, but when he was a juvenile detective, you had to have a secondary job skill back then. So it wasn't just you weren't just focusing on that. So he ended up taking up occult, because back then there was a lot of occult activity here everywhere in the nation, to be honest.
Uh, so they
So
had an
he
actual department for it.
Yeah, well, it was him.
Well,
He was the guy.
yeah,
He was
but
the
they had a
department.
position. They had a position on paper for it, though.
Yeah, so he actually had to go to school for to demonologists. A demonologist taught this class and was explaining, like he was just, my dad still received letters from this guy. They used to send Christmas cards to each other and everything. But I remember my dad was telling me, for some reason, that guy was saying, for some reason, Pueblo's like a big epicenter for just strange things, like whether it's evil or
My
just strangeness. I don't know how you would really describe it. He put it a certain way, but like if you look back at the past, you figure the Fort Pueblo was massacred by the Indians. That's a bad thing that happened. Later on in life, we had a whole lot of mob activity here, which we still do. It's just kind of under the
To
radar now.
interject, Gerald, sorry, but
Yeah,
there's a
shoot.
whole underground system beneath the town that the mob used to use. So
Yeah,
it expands all the way from the west all the way downtown, and it's everywhere. There's a tunnel system.
Like sewers, or like full on
no, these
underground.
are
No,
like tunnels. Like, so what they used to do is bootleg, and what the reason why none of the stuff's on the records So like all of downtown was interconnected. Like the police station was connected to City Hall. The City Hall was connected to like all these little bars down there. And it was more like a bootlegging operation. That's how they get smuggled booze through here
Okay.
and there. There was a reason why Pueblo was called Little Chicago at one time. And it's because the mafia presence here. I mean, what would happen is like a mobster would retire from back east, and what they do is they send him to the west to get a bar, and that would be his retirement gift. And basically, they just make money and send it back to the families
And it's not just
later
dirt
on.
tunnels, it's very immaculate.
Yeah. In fact, when they were building the Riverwalk here in Pueblo, the city inspectors and stuff, and everybody was working freaked out because they dug into one of these tunnels on accident. They're freaking digging to put in the Riverwalk, and their backhoe went into a freaking tunnel. And it's like, what the heck, man? None of this is on the records. What's going on? What used to happen back then is, say Adam's a private contractor. I hire Adam to do works from A to B at this time. Once he's done with that, I fire him. I hire Scotty. Scotty does this section. I fire him. I hire the next guy. He does this section. So none of it's on records. It's all
Yeah.
off the
And
books essentially.
nobody knows the whole where
Nobody
it
knows the
goes.
whole layout,
Wow.
unless you bring everybody together and say, "Hey, Adam, what did you work on? Well, Scotty, what did you work on? What did you work on? Okay, let's piece it together." That didn't happen. So there was that stuff going on. And then for some reason, like the occult was really big here too. It was kind of interesting. Like you had your typical, like the way that my dad put it is like anytime you see stuff out there, like people drawing inverted pentagrams and doing their whole devil worship, sacrificing animals, those people are wannabes. They're not. They're just wannabe Satanists. They're nothing.
They
Just
like the theater
whatever.
of it.
Yeah, it's all a theater thing to them. It's a fad. It's like the gangs. It turns into a fad after a while, and then it moves to something else. And at the time, the occult was a big fad, but we still had other stuff going on here that was actually swept under the rug. My dad was saying like, but you got to understand is people who are actually part of like devil worship and the occult and everything. But one thing most of them who do stuff actually kind of like brag about it because they want to be known. It's how they get recognition. So people who like sacrifice, they do that for a reason because they want to rule in hell as opposed to serve. So better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven type of thing.
But
That's
I
kind of
think
like
in it,
their mindset. Though real occultists, like people who are really, really hardcore into it, who actually do rituals and things like that, those people were highly influential. So they're doctors, lawyers, politicians, people like that. They're in high positions. So even like to this day, we don't know a lot of the stuff my dad kind of uncovered and found out has all just been kind of brushed under the rug. Judges ignored it. And I don't know if that was one of the things where they didn't want it to be out in the limelight, because at the time the FBI was trying to denounce occultism and Satanists. They're saying there's no such thing as the occult and stuff. And then like a week after they said that, there was a church down in Mexico that was found, and they found like 144 sacrifices, like dead bodies that were being sacrificed out there. So it kind of like shot their whole entire argument to shit.
Is that what Kevin Smith's Red State was based on there?
Mm, I don't know.
Great movie if you haven't seen
I
it.
have to check it out though. It's interesting to see. Then you got like just certain things that pop up nowadays, and it's been around, but it's more hitting the limelight, or it had been. It'd be like Santa Muerte. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Mhm.
Our Lady of Holy Death. That's supposedly that's the as far as I think back in 2011, 2012, it was the fastest growing basically occult religion in the US. And it was stemming from Mexico, and it was coming over, and they even found stuff back east. They found a few how was it, altars. So you see like the Grim Reaper altar, and that's part of Santa Muerte. And that follows a lot more of the cartels. Cartels believe in that. They pray to them for good shipments and pray for if they need to kill somebody or want somebody dead. It's been glorified in like certain movies or shows. Like, so you watch Breaking Bad, you see those two assassins praying at the feet of a Reaper
well,
and
what's
all
the
that.
saint that they
That's
pray to?
Santa
It's
Muerte.
yeah, but there's
It's
another one where it's their last resort where they still believe in Catholicism, but I can't
well,
remember
what it
the one in
is
particular.
it's kind of a loose base off Catholicism, and what happened back then was when the Indians were being converted to Catholicism back when the Spaniards came over, what they were doing was this is kind of like a history of all this stuff. What they were doing was they were using our saints, like our Catholic saints, like Saint Joseph or Saint Christopher or what have you, as placements for their gods. So like one of the like so it would look like they're praying to like Saint Christopher or Saint Joseph, like they're being a good Catholic. No, actually they're using our saints as a placeholder for their gods or their deities. Um, I couldn't tell you exactly what their last resort thing was. All I know really is like Santa Muerte and about like
Th-
some of the certain colors of the candles mean certain things. Like a black candle or a black reaper is like pretty much one of the baddest ones you could like stumble across. You see that, that's basically them praying for them for like a good assassination or a good death, you know, like how to kill somebody. Like that's what they're doing and stuff like that.
So very much
Santa
like
Muerte is basically like they've basically took the Virgin Mary and made her into like this Reaper figure. And that's basically what it is. And as Catholics, we don't really believe in an angel of death. We never have that. Like if you look back in like Catholicism teachings and all that, usually when God wants something done, he sends Gabriel. You know, Gabriel takes the firstborns out of Egypt, you know, he kills all them. He usually uses them as like the tools, but we never really have like an angel of death as far as I've seen or looked at. Like mainly it's like Gabriel's being sent to do something. Like we do have like a hierarchy of angels and stuff like that, but we never really have an angel of death. Whereas Santa Muerte, they're loosely based off of Catholicism. They have an angel of death. It's Saint Death, you know, Our Lady of Holy Death. That's what they call her. And like if you see that around, like it's not really a bad thing. Like it's it's a popular religion that's building up, or it was building up back in 2011. I know we got off like a weird tangent here, but like that was just one of the interesting things I thought about. I don't know why, it just popped in my head.
yeah, I guess I hadn't realized. I mean, it sounds like it's very much akin to like Haitian voodoo.
Yeah, real similar.
It's just taking like African influences or African established African religious beliefs, and again throwing the Catholicism in there, and you
It's
know,
a way to so like for those people and stuff, it's like a way to worship your deities or your well for like Haitian voodoo and all that, your loas or your gods without putting it out there. You're actually worshiping them, you know.
Yeah, it's more like
Now
a
like
sense that the Mexican people are so rooted in Catholicism that they just can't give it up. And that's who I was talking about is Jose or Malverde, is that's their last resort. I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's instead of Santa Muerte, that's who they pray to as their saint as a last resort. So they have a sense they know that they're not going to go to heaven because of their Catholicism, but they pray to him. And I don't know if you ever seen that before. That's how he looks. But that's who
oh, okay.
they pray to as a last resort. And that's what I was going to say about Pueblo in general. I think because there's always weird stuff going on here. And my personal belief is the waterway because we have the big reservoir and the waterways connect here. And I think that brings stuff here.
Yeah, I'm with you there because like you said, me and you talked about this before, where like the waterways, like so before the reservoir was even built, we had the Great Flood here. If you look up our Pueblo history,
Mhm.
and that killed a lot of people and caused a lot of damage and everything. But you have two major waterways connecting to each other, and that's the whole reason why the fort was built here. I mean, the two major waterways, you have the Arkansas and the Fountain coming together in one area, so it's a good place to set up shop. Well, water is very, very significant to a lot of us, you know, like a lot of our ancestors and everything in that aspect. You know, you follow the water, water's a way of life. So even like in the past, most big places are built around waterways. So yeah,
And
I
that's
think that
also
was.
native belief is that spirits are carried through the waterways.
Yeah.
And we
So
have
that's another thing
deep-rooted
where
native structure all around southern Colorado.
that's a very good valiant point too about Pueblo, just the waterways connecting to each other. I mean, we built a dam to stop it from flooding ever again, essentially. But in doing that, I think we also changed our weather. It's kind of weird. It's strange.
So do you have any other stories you'd like to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about?
Oh yeah. Uh, I got into college and it's just, uh, internet kind of springs up, and I'm surfing one day, as much surfing as there was back then. I mean, this was, uh, early mid 90s. So still a fledgling internet. But I come across some information that talks about the old Mansfield Reformatory, which is up in Ohio, just outside of Mansfield. Uh, and it was this, historic prison. And I'm reading about it. I'm like, okay, interesting. And then I read, oh, this place is supposed to be very, very haunted. I'm like, well, okay, interesting. And I'm reading a bit more about it. And then I find out, oh, they do overnight stays, uh, ghost hunting events.
That's still present. That's still going on.
For last I
Hmm.
looked, they still do it, but they don't do it in the manner that we had the opportunity to.
Okay.
Uh, when we did it, they did like throughout the warm summer months, like every weekend, they would do an overnight ghost hunt, and you'd pay them $75 or whatever, and you could, participate. Uh, Now it looks like it has changed that they do short guided, more of ghost tours, and only once you've done it enough times and kicked them enough money, uh, can you potentially do like an overnight ghost hunt. Uh, this is an old prison, historic register, and basically they do this kind of stuff to generate money to just keep the building in shape and the roof from falling in kind of thing.
Mm.
But so I read all this and I called up a couple buddies of mine. I'm like, hey, this summer when we're all home, how about we go do this? This sounds, like something. Uh, and initially, a bunch of people are like, "Yeah, let's do it." And uh, it came around at the end. It wound up being just me and my one buddy Andrew. So we go, and they, we get there like 8 o'clock or whatever, and they break up into groups, give everybody a tour of the place. It's a full prison. Two full cell blocks and a main. The layout is a central building that is administration, uh, offices. It houses the quarters for the warden and assistant warden and their families. I think also somewhere off of that was, like initial processing and that kind of thing. And then off one wing, an A block, and off the other side, a B block. Uh, and that was, this prison, massive, massive single building. Kind of cool looking, kind of
And what does it date back to?
I would have to look. I would say construction wise, it was probably, without looking and guessing off the top of my head, I would probably say it was maybe the 20s,
Okay.
or late 19s. When
1910. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah. Built between 1886 and 1910.
okay,
Remained in operation until 1990,
yep.
supposedly.
And it's a cool looking
Extreme.
building. It's very kind of castle looking. Uh,
Yeah,
and,
it's
and many
it's
people
imposing.
and many people are familiar with it because if you've seen Shawshank Redemption, the facades and the yard, that is Mansfield Reformatory.
Hmm.
It was also used. It's used in several movies. Um, it was used in the opening scene of the Soviet prison in Air Force One, that was Mansfield Reformatory. So when we went, at least at the time, uh, because they had used it to film, and obviously it was well on its way out, and they had built the brand new prison behind it, uh,
Oh,
on the
so it's
adjoining
just behind
property.
it.
Yeah, so the new existing prisons behind it on the adjoining property. Uh, so they were like, hey, we can rent it out and to film studios and whatnot. So you at the time you'd walk in there and from Air Force One, there was the painting of was it Lenin or Stalin on the wall? That was they left that. They just painted it on the wall and they're like, hey, no reason to cover it up. It's a used film set. Uh, from Shawshank, the sewage pipe that he crawls through, it was a giant cardboard like carpet roll that they just went in and decorated the inside to look like, you
That's all
know,
it was.
that's all it was.
Wow.
It's still sitting there. You could literally stick your head in the same, uh, you know,
Sorry, Adam. And he
80
didn't
feet or whatever, 80 yards.
didn't crawl through shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we of course got shots of ourselves with our heads in the sewage pipe. Uh, the halfway house was actually a room that they just did up in the administration part of the prison to be the halfway house. So you still had, you could look up there and see carved in the wood, red was here.
Mm.
Uh, so it was, cool space. And that was part of why we're like, ooh, let's go check this out. There was a recognizability about this space, and at the time those movies were still very, very fresh. So we went and they did these tours, real quick, just loop through. Hey, there's this spot, there's that spot. You can't go over here right now; it's chained off because this is an old building. You walk through here, the metal grate's likely to give way, and you're going to be in a world of hurt kind of scenario. But otherwise they're like, if it's not chained off as a hazard, you can go there. So they did a tour, brought us back, fed everybody some pizza, and they said, okay, here's the rules. You can not sleep. No one's allowed to try and just, take a nap or whatever, or go to bed. Uh, you cannot try and scare anybody else. You can use any ghost hunting equipment or whatever that you want. And once you leave, you cannot come back. You have until sunrise. And they cut the power to the building.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
So me and my buddy Andrew, so we're going through in the dark. So we have, hiking headlamps on, battery powered headlamps, and you get in there in the dark in these cell blocks, and the paint was gnarly and peeling off of every surface, and it's old and filthy and dusty. So you've got dust particles floating in front of you, and it's ink black. So it's literally the air of like I'm at the bottom of the ocean. When you see those videos of the deep sea subs and they're looking out and it's just silt and you're like, that's what it felt like. There could be anything just beyond, that little bit of cast that your headlamp gives. So we had those and we had cameras and that's all we brought with us. We were not so much of like, hey, let's try and get scientific here. We were part of it was the fun of, ooh, well, will we see or experience anything? But it was also like, come on, this is, urban decay adventure at its best. So we're going through there, and the way the two cell blocks go, there is the side that faces away from the new prison, bottom of the sea, pitch black. The side that faces the new prison yard, the windows are, I mean, years and years and years of filth, uh, darn near opaque. So the after about 5 minutes, your eyes adjust just enough to catch that there is a faint orange glow from the adjoining prison yard lights. So you can, as long as nobody walks through with a flashlight, your eyes will eventually barely adjust that you can kind of see where you're going. So we're going through. creepy space to begin with. The overall cell blocks really don't see or experience anything. It's cool, it's creepy. You can walk into the individual cells, and it's like, there's obviously an air of this is the last place I would ever want to find myself, locked up in. It definitely, the movies it was used in of, hey, here is end of the line despair. They picked the perfect place for sure. What we did experience was more centered around the administration building, which again is just it's what the cell blocks join onto. And we go in there, and there's one room that's just the locker room. It was, and again, it was built in like, the tens. It's just a big open room. The walls have built-in locker cabinets. So they're, beautiful, beautiful, finished wood. They're probably 6 foot tall lockers. And then above those, after some trim work and whatnot, there's little, maybe 2x2 cubbies with a door on it, just a little knob, uh, all above all of those. So we walk in, and doors on everything are shut, and we peek in a couple of them, and they're empty. There's no reason. It's not like they're putting on museum exhibits or anything like that. It's just, okay, yeah, this was an old locker room. Great. Uh, Not a big deal. Don't think anything of it. It's a boring room. Everything said. And we turn around and we spend a minute in there just kind of checking it out, going, okay, interesting. Turn around and walk out. And as we're walking out, a couple young college girls, probably a year or two younger than us, uh, walk past us, and they go into the room, and we get maybe 10 feet down the hall and hear a shriek. And we turn around and double back, and we're like, okay, what just happened? Did somebody fall or whatever? And these girls are in this room, freaked the hell out. And they were both much, much shorter than us. My buddy Andrew was, starting to push 6 feet. So he was the tallest of us by far. And these girls are freaked out. All of the locker doors and all of the cubby doors had swung wide open. And there's no way in the half second that we passed those girls and they walked into that room, could they have gotten up, reached the cubby doors, and opened every single one of them? They would have had to have been really acrobatic, like one girl hop on the other girl's shoulders, and literally the two of them together run down and boom, 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 boom. But I tell you, the period of time from us walking out, passing them walking in, and hearing them scream and us rushing back in, no way. So, and they're just like, yeah, we're in here, and all of a sudden, all the doors flew open.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't explain it. Is there explanation possibilities? Of course. Could it be somebody somewhere with fishing line or something just for a gag of, hey, we'll give the people their money's worth? Sure. We never saw any evidence of that. We couldn't find any evidence of it.
Did you
and
talk
again,
to the girls?
only for a minute. They were so freaked out. They're like, we're
They're
going.
out.
They exited. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they were, tiny wispy things. So it's just like, no, they're, I mean, these were, old craftsmanship. These were big, heavy, 3/4 inch hardwood, custom made cabinetry doors and everything. And, the bottom lockers all had, like turn latches, turn handles, to latch them. The top, were just, everything was tightly fit. I mean, they don't make it like that anymore. So it's just like, yeah, there's no way on earth these two little things, opened up, because there's at least a dozen locker units, so 24 doors top and bottom. So no way.
So I mean,
Uh,
even if it was strung together, it would have been rather obvious if it was.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
And again, they're raising money to try and refurbish this place and save it. It's on the historic register, so you don't go and let's start drilling holes and running fishing line everywhere and destroy what you are actively making, trying to raise money to
Store.
historic register protect. The people running this were not your like your normal tourist trap people. These are folks that are like volunteering, going, "Hey, we're generating money because it's a historic building."
Hmm.
So, uh, across from that space, there's another room. No lights in it, no windows. It's just a very central room in this space. Uh, it was one of those probably when the architect was designing it, is just like, well, you're going to wind up with a random room. Y'all can use it for storage or whatever. It's not the room that anybody's going to want to put an office in or anything necessarily. You know, but it's probably 24 by 24, just a little square room, no windows, and there is a student desk sitting in that at some point somebody brought in an old school student desk, the chair desk combo, set it down in the middle of the room and just left it. Again, you're not thinking anything of it. And on multiple occasions throughout the night, us and other people that we would pass, you could take that chair, pull it out of the center of the room, set it off to the side, and come back a minute later, and it always moves back to the center of the room.
Hmm.
Uh,
Something just pissed the whole fucking night. It's like, God,
Something
why are
was
these
picked
people
out.
moving my chair?
Exactly.
Stop
And,
it.
and it's one of those things, again, we're trying to figure out the rationale of, okay, what's happening? Could there be somebody doing this? Us and other people would like kind of hide down the hallways to wait to see is there somebody that like is continuously running back in and moving it back and, trying to trick everybody. Could never catch anybody going into the room and moving the chair back. And when we spent probably way too much time in the evening, through that night testing that, and other people were testing it too, and they're just like, yeah, that chair always moves back,
Hmm.
right to the center of the room.
So I wonder if you put it outside in like past the doorway, if it would do anything, or did you even try that?
That was one thing we did not try. It's one of those things. You're still, it's dark in the place, and even with flashlights, you're like, I don't want to. Trying to be respectful and not move this out into the hallway where somebody's going to trip over it, you
Okay.
know. Because the last thing we did want to do is like get kicked out because yeah, you're putting shit people to trip on. Uh, but yeah, don't know that anybody had necessarily tested that, and maybe that would be the foil. Uh, there was a central hallway. It's probably about 10 feet wide, and it was only about maybe 30 feet along, and it connected the administration building into kind of a just a point where it left the administration building and then did branch off into the cell blocks, into the prisoner housing proper. Uh, it had two windows on it, caught a little bit of moonlight. Otherwise just a hallway. And at one point we're walking through it, and we'd been through it several times that evening. Because it's not that big a prison. I mean, it's a it's a good sized space, but over the course of an entire night, you're doing the loops. And we come through at this one point, and I'm kind of on the right hand side of the hallway, and my buddy Andrew is on the left hand side of the hallway, and there's probably a good 12 feet between the two of us. So catty corner to each other, in this hallway. And we're just walking through and we're just kind of talking, thinking nothing of anything, and all of a sudden my stomach turns. I mean, kind of the level of like somebody punched you in the stomach.
Mm.
Like, wow, what was that? And before I say anything, I hear him behind me go, dude, what was that? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, something just went by me and kicked my hand. at the same time that I felt like somebody went by me and punched me in the stomach.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know, is there any rational explanation to that? I'm having trouble coming up with it. Again, is it going to make me believe in anything hardcore? No, it's not. You know, I just had, some cheap, probably a Little Caesars pizza or whatever that they had ordered and fed us before the tour. So, I mean, yeah, there's a good chance that, my stomach's acting up. But the fact
Well,
of the timing,
it would be one thing if it was just you.
yeah,
You just felt
Mhm.
that, like, oh, my stomach, bad food. No, but for your friend to get like, kicked in the hand by something, that's where it's like, okay, that's too much of a coincidence. It's, something like that happens. Oh shit.
yeah. And the fact that, we're in the same location, but not, we weren't like right side by side or anything like that. I mean, there was definitely some distance between the both of us, but it's right at the same time as, as if somebody walked down the middle of that hallway and boom, boom, you know, like that. Uh, so yeah, yeah, very, very creepy. There were other couple instances in this particular night where we're walking through the prison, and at one point he's in front of me and I'm behind him, and we'd left a space that had some other ghost hunters in, left them behind. They were doing their thing, and we're just again hallway from one section to another. And you get that feeling when somebody is walking right on your heels, breathing down your neck. And again, we just left a space with people. So you're like, oh, somebody followed me. Not a big deal. Turn around, nobody there. But you're like, wow, I could swear somebody was, and it's not that, oh, I think the whole time somebody's following me or watching me or whatever. It was very much oh, all of a sudden somebody's up on my ass, you know. Because this is, it's not one of those things like I'm completely unaware of myself and my surroundings, and then all of a sudden, general awareness sinks in. It's like, no, I know. Here I am. I'm walking down the hall. Feeling the temperature. I can hear the people in the background, and all of a sudden, boom, somebody's right on you.
Mm.
So, so yeah, it was a very unique space. If anybody has a chance to check it out, and especially the opportunity to take like an overnight ghost hunting stay there, uh, whether or not it's something of, hey, am I going to find anything? It's still just a fun, unique experience just because of the nature of the building itself and that property. It's just a cool space to explore. So I'd highly recommend that.
Yeah, I know me and Gerald would love to do something like that. That specifically would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be. I wish we'd be able to do something like that where like the state hospital and the tunnels they use that
Oh
go
yeah.
between the areas. Because man, like there's some stories of that. My brother, he works there now, but when he first worked there, he was doing security, and him and his buddies went down those tunnels and they were taking pictures with their old phones. They have flip phones. They're taking pictures and video recordings, and they got a photo of like it looked like two guards were standing over somebody else. And when you're walking down those tunnels, even my mom works there now, and they sometimes still use those tunnels to transport like food and everything, like their orders every once in a while from one building to another. So they don't have to walk out into the streets. But she said it's kind of creepy. Like you still see slits in the walls where there used to be like cells, and you still see like shackles on the walls, like where people were like shackled.
Oh
But
wow! And
my brother
they
was,
just left the shackles.
yeah, they just left them there in the wall because they just walled them up. They walled them off and didn't just close it off, but you still see like little slits in there.
And sorry to interject,
Well,
Gerald, real quick, but those same
good.
tunnels connect to the same ones downtown. Like they're
No,
everywhere.
those ones don't.
No,
Those ones just go from one area to another, from
the
the
people that
same
were
hospital
like
to the other one.
there's some that do. I know a lady that works there that's administrator. She said they do.
Oh
Like there's
shit,
some that
that's gonna
do.
be interesting.
Yeah.
And, it could be a possibility because those tunnels. there's a lot of tunnels like people are still finding. I think even like my tattoo artist who lives down there or who works downtown in
Cyphorus?
Herb. Hmm?
Cyphorus?
No, my tattoo artist Addie.
Okay.
He owns a cat house tattoos.
Because he owns
Shout out.
a place down there and his spot connects to the tunnels.
Yeah, her basement. There's like some places where it looks like they're walled off where it used to connect at one time,
Okay.
but they've been walled off. You know,
He just has
earlier
a
on.
gate.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Pop the gate and go.
Hmm.
But anyway, those tunnels. What I was saying, my brother and his friends were down there and they're taking videos and stuff. Well, they had a video, and I wish I could have got the damn video off their phone. But you know, those old flip phones, they don't. It's hard to get videos off of that stuff without them being corrupted or jacked up. The quality sucks. But when they had it, they had pictures and video, and the video they had was of two guys who looked like guards standing over somebody else who looked like they were digging. And they look over to them at the guys, and you hear audibly in the video, it's like, shh, they're looking at us. Like, shush, they can see us, or somebody's looking at us. And then it goes away. And they're saying, man, it was freaking creepy. Saying, man, we saw that. My mom doesn't like going down those tunnels when she works. Like, it's kind of creepy. And you figure, I mean, you still had shackles on the walls and stuff back in the day when they used to just shackle the crazies, the inmates, you know.
And
There's a lot of interesting history there.
that kind of stuff's creepier to me, and I think more interesting than the places that you expect to be some level of disturbed. I've been down in the when I was in college, I had a couple opportunities to go to overseas, and so I've been down in the French catacombs in Paris. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, that must be so haunted." I'm like, "Well, I mean, you're surrounded by bones, but this was a space that, they created it to uh, reinter all the bodies because the graveyards themselves were so poorly kept and they didn't dig deep enough that they get some flood water or whatever, and all of a sudden you got bodies popping up out of the ground. So the catacombs are space that everybody's put to a final relaxing spot. This was not a spot where anybody actually died. Yeah, it's macabre. It's a neat place to visit and experience, but you don't get a sense. At least I never did get a sense down there of, oh, there's something otherworldly going on here. It's just
Yeah,
a very quiet space, but you
it's
go into those old, the old forgotten, access tunnels and or buried chunks of city where people actually lived and actually died and had horrible things happen to them. That's the okay, yeah, there might be something more here. Uh, and it's just definitely always more interesting to me.
yeah, I'm with you there. As far as like cemeteries and things like that, the catacombs, cemeteries, mausoleums, those places are final resting places. Nine times out of ten, those places aren't really haunted. You're not seeing spirits there or anything like that, unless like for instance, you're going like to a place like Louisiana and you're going to, like Marie Laveau's grave for some reason, the voodoo priestess. But people go there for a reason because they're asking for guidance or asking for help with a spell or what have you. They're using that basically as a religious thing, like an altar. But
Yeah.
yeah, cemeteries and all that, like you hardly ever that they're macabre. I mean, for sure, and there's dead bodies there. There's mausoleum, the same thing. It's kind of creepy, but as far as like it being haunted or any kind of negative energy, unless if it was something that like Gettysburg, for instance,
Yeah.
that place probably definitely has energy, even though it's a cemetery there. Well, a lot of people died there. It was a battlefield. Of course, there's going to be energy and stuff there, ghosts possibly, things like
Yeah.
that.
The
You're going to
unintentional
see it.
cemeteries.
But yeah, cemetery like our local cemeteries here, I I
They
could
don't feel
walk
like
through
nothing.
those. Yeah, I could walk through those at night. I could walk through them 3 a.m. in the morning, wouldn't even matter. I wouldn't care what time I'm walking through them. It's just a cemetery. It's just where people are laid to rest.
Yeah, it's
There'd be
funny
no
how
bad things there.
Pueblo feels so active spiritually everywhere else but the cemeteries. It's very
Yeah.
odd.
And it's like, like Sky says, a place of rest. I mean, that's where there's not going to be a whole lot of stuff there. Now, we do have stories of a few cemeteries here and there in Colorado. One of them, Adam, have you heard the one up in Central City, a cemetery that supposedly has iron bars over the grave? It's supposed to be a grave of a witch.
Central City. Is that by
Yeah, it's
Blackhawk?
by Black Hawk. Yeah,
Okay,
there's a
yeah.
cemetery up there, and they have iron bars over the grave. It's like a
Okay.
cage over the grave, and it's supposed to be a site of like a witch,
Hmm.
and that's why they put the bars over there. And well, see, that stuff's kind of interesting too, because you go to places like in Europe, like old parts of like Romania and all that, they still believe in Strigoi,
Mhm.
vampires and all that. So they have like you look at graves there, or if you exhume a body there, you'll find like a stake through the heart and like the head cut off, or like a sickle over the neck to prevent something from coming back. That's interesting to me. I think that's fascinating. Ancient stuff like that, like just ancient myths and stories, like where they have werewolves and lycanthropy, they have the Strigoi, and then you translate that to the U.S. or even like the Native Americans having the same kind of stories of like the Navajo having skinwalkers, and then us having like in the East Coast you have stuff like Wendigo and Wendigo psychosis and all that. It comes from eating the dead. So stuff like that is fascinating to me. It's like, well, why is that deep rooted into our psyche? Why is that like almost like encoded into our DNA? And that comes to the same thing of the uncanny valley. If you ever think about that, like, why are we so afraid of things that mimic human, like that aren't quite human but are close? That we don't like that. It's like encoded in our DNA not to like something that's similar to us. You got to wonder if like maybe in the past our ancestors were hunted by something similar to us, you know. That's why we don't like it. And it's kind of fascinating to kind of go down a little rabbit hole.
No, no. Well, and it's interesting because I mean, you can also see that there is potentially a scientific side to some of that stuff too, like the monsters that feast on people, or humans that are used to be human are now monsters and feast on people, and because there's like that, I forget the anybody who went to med school would be able to call it right out. There is that condition that you can get if you do eat human meat.
Kovu.
Uh,
It's
like a protein or something that
yeah, you get
basically makes you go crazy.
prions in the brain,
Yeah.
and what it does is it turns your brain basically into like Swiss cheese. It happens a lot in Papua New Guinea. Those tribes out there, they
Mm.
develop something called Kovu, and it's essentially like chronic wasting disease or like mad cow disease for people.
Yeah.
But
So,
you look at that though, and you wonder about that as well. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah.
feeding cows cow brains gives them mad cow disease. It adds the prions into their system. So that's just one of those things encoded in our DNA. It's like, hey, we're not supposed to eat that stuff. You know, you're not supposed to eat your own kind. There's a reason for that, and that it's kind of like if you look at that in genetic sense, there's something out there that's causing that. So if you eat your own kind, it creates a prion which destroys your brain, which in turn destroys you.
Yeah. So you can see how that very easily turns into, especially back in times where they could not explain medicine, genetics or anything like that, it turns into the cautionary tale of, hey, Frank back there, went a little nuts because he got hungry, ate Steve for dinner, and now he's cuckoo, and how that quickly turns into a okay,
Cautionary tale.
he's a Strigoi, don't become a Strigoi.
Well, that's the whole entire process. That's the whole entire concept of Wendigo psychosis and the Wendigo. Because the Wendigo was a cautionary tale from the Indians that, hey, don't eat your own kind. If you're starving, you're going to turn into an insatiable beast that craves human flesh. Well, Wendigo psychosis is an actual psychosis that comes from that. So that's kind of where you're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
So before medicine was, or before science actually brought this to light, you get to the point where you have stories that told you that. And it's the same thing. Like if you look at religious aspects of that reason, like the reason why Jewish people don't eat pork, they deem it an unclean meat. Well, we eat pork nowadays because we know you just have to cook it long enough. If you
Mhm.
don't cook it long enough, yeah, you'll get parasites, you'll get sick. But if you cook pork long enough, you're fine. You cook all that stuff out. It's the same thing if you eat bear or a mountain lion. If you don't
Mhm.
cook that stuff thoroughly, you're gonna get parasites. You're gonna get sick. But back then they didn't know that. They just knew, hey, we eat this animal. This animal makes people sick. Don't eat it. Put it in the book. Put it in the book. Nobody eats this animal ever. You
Yeah.
know.
Have you guys ever heard of the type of ghost that's not human, that is made up of animals? If and I've been searching to be reminded of the name for years now. I'd heard it years ago watching like the old Leonard Nimoy
It's made up of animals. Can it morph?
yeah. It doesn't more
So it's not a skinwalker?
not a skinwalker. It was like one of the old Leonard Nimoy, the In Search ofs, that I first saw a hint of it, and then I saw something that elaborated on it, that they were talking about in Scotland, in one of those castles and all, and they have the oubliettes, where they toss people and anything they don't like and want to forget about, down this pit where you break your ankles and stuff and just slowly starve to death, and they literally just throw you in the pit and you're done.
Mm.
But they were watching this episode, and they were talking about this one type of apparition that is supposedly made up of different components of dead animals. So it forms this beast, but it's like a Frankenstein kind of beast.
Hmm.
So it doesn't take any kind of human form or talk, it doesn't talk or anything like that. It's literally just this spectral composite beast that and I heard about this, you know, uh, uh, again, back as a kid watching the old Leonard Nimoy In Search ofs, and then followed it with something else, and they really spelled out the name. There's some specific Scottish name for it, and I've not been able to track the name down again, which they had referred to.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've never heard of that. Have you been trying to find something, Gerald?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it now. Harbinger ghost animals. Trying to find stuff in the UK.
yeah, I
Bear
haven't.
guests, bar guests, hellhounds. Just a few things like that. But
Yeah,
it
it was very much
it
very
kind of
much made of
reminds me of different stories.
yeah,
So it reminds me of Shakespeare. Well, not Shakespeare. It was it wasn't Shakespeare. It was
Beowulf?
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
yeah,
Um,
like the
the
Baskerville.
story, yeah, Hounds of the Baskerville kind of reminds me of that in a
Yeah,
way. But
very much the same idea, but again, it's supposedly very composite, made up of multiple animal spirits that just kind of clumped together was the overall concept. And I remember after college, a buddy of mine had bought this townhouse, in one of the subdivisions of Detroit, and I've never even told him this, but he bought this townhouse, gorgeous space. The woman that had lived there before him, her back bedroom, she had basically had just a full menagerie of pets. I mean, when he first bought the place, we went in there and did a lot of cleanup and gutting and whatnot, and refurb, remodeling. And you walked in this back bedroom, and you could smell that. Yes, this woman had way too many pets in this back bedroom for way too long. Hardwood floors, and it was down into the floor and everything. Uh, so I learned that, and I, over the next several years, I'd be up there visiting and whatnot, and I could swear on multiple occasions, sitting down in the living room just watching TV, hanging out, having a beer, and I'd be sitting there in the chair and not always, but multiple occasions, swear that there is something sitting animal size at the top of those stairs watching me.
Hmm.
And again, it's that creepy back hallway kind of thing of, everything's going fine. I mean, we're not watching scary shit on TV, we're watching, old reruns of Dukes of Hazzard or whatever, having a beer, having a good time, and all of a sudden you get that feeling of there's an animal sitting at the top of the steps watching me. And my buddy at the time didn't have any pets. He got a dog later on, but at the time didn't have any pets. Uh, but yeah, we'd just be sitting there, and I'm just like, man, I feel like there's something kind of dog-sized sitting at the top of those stairs, just watching. Not menacing, not growling, not, but you get the feeling of there is something right there that's just, you know, seeing what's going on,
Lurking.
lurking.
Hmm.
So, but and once you get that feeling, then you're just like, okay. And I remember once hearing about, and therefore, okay, could this be an entity that's a composite of, you know, uh previous pets that this woman owned? Because yeah, it certainly sounded like she went through many. So, but so yeah, that always creeps me out, and it was weird because could be hanging out one time and nothing, and the next time all of a sudden you're like, wow, something's off, something's watching me from the top of those stairs. So,
We had an incident like that when we lived on a place. It's called Goat Hill here in Pueblo. It's where all the Irish, I think the Irish used to live there for the steel mill that was that little neighborhood. But we lived in that one, and we had a dog. She was a kind of a medium-sized dog. But me and my dad were up early in the morning one day, and it was just me and him, and we're talking, and we saw a little black dog run across our living room from one part to another. And like I chalked it down, like we both tried to chalk it down, like I mean, we're just tired. What the hell, Why are we up so early type of thing, Did any of us sleep? But we saw a little black dog, and I swear it was like maybe like a poodle sized dog, like a mini poodle, just go by, and it was weird. So like, and that was one of those things like you don't know if you talk to like priests and stuff, and they'll tell you like, oh, dogs don't have souls or pets don't have souls. I'm like, I don't know. I think that's full of shit. I think they have spirits too. You see a ghost or something like that, an apparition of
yeah,
of an animal or something. So we saw a dog walk by, and it wasn't our dog for sure. Wasn't
yeah.
anything near our dog. That's kind of
If
weird.
you kind of believe in souls, it's kind of silly to, just for the sake of making it operate within a structured religion of, oh, your pets can't have souls too, just because they can't ask to be absolved or
Yeah,
anything like
involved.
that.
Yeah.
You know, or most people don't baptize your pets, and therefore, okay, that you know, we need to work some rules here. Uh, so I know up to now you
Uh,
guys are probably like, well, shit, he's just had some feelings of stuff.
for Scottish folklore, one of the
Hmm.
things that's shape shifting would be like a kelpie. I don't know if
That's
you've
what I
ever
just
heard of
looked up
that.
too.
Yeah,
Kelpie.
kelpies is one.
That's not it
And
either.
that's no, that can't. That it's usually in the shape of a horse,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
that thing draws you to water, then takes you under and kills you, type of thing. That's
Yeah, it
what
has
like you
a
go to ride
tail
this
of
horse,
the
and
fish.
you find out like the horse has like webbing on its feet, like it has like a webbing instead of hooves, and it takes you once you jump on it to ride it, this beautiful horse, it takes you into the lake and drowns you,
yeah. I think that's
supposedly.
supposed to be more akin to like the fairy folk.
Yeah, and well, speaking about those, that's kind of interesting too. You think about like we even have a lot of myths and things like that. Like for us in Colorado, we have the tommyknockers. The miners believe in that. They believe in little people. Adam, you've had issues like that, haven't you? Or like a instance where you believe in something like that. So that comes back to the other folklore of like the little people, house elves, sprites, and that's something that like we've lost nowadays, like in our modern culture. Like we don't believe in stuff like that, but people back in the day used to believe in gnomes and things like that.
Yeah, at my grandma's house, they used to see little people run across the house everywhere. Like they would be that tall and they would run and they'd see them.
I think that's kind of interesting. I think I have to ask my wife, but somebody just told me a story about that. Oh, it was my coworker was saying that his aunt and uncle, same thing. They saw what they thought was like a miniature person walking around their house. And they kind of freaked out. It's like, oh shit. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. Oh, I have to talk to them about that. That was interesting. I'll see which one it is, see if I can get a hold of them again.
I mean,
But yeah, they were talking about like a little person. And that I was telling them that's interesting you say that because they used to believe in stuff like that, old folklore and tales like that. And there's also stuff like where you stay away from certain items like boulder fields, you stay away from those. Like there's cautionary tales about that. There's cautionary tales about fairy circles, like mushrooms or something growing in a circle or plants growing in a circle out in the woods. Just leave it alone. Don't go near it,
Well, at my
because that's
farm, I could
unnatural.
tell you, at my farm, I could tell you that there's a hill, so there's a driveway where you reach the top and there's containers up there. And if you walk up the hill, sometimes there'll be a circle of rocks. They shouldn't be there. So I don't touch them or disturb them. It's
like
very
Yeah,
like
strange.
I mean,
hey,
What's that?
say again.
how big are
Sorry.
rocks?
They're maybe like that big.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's very intentional and weird. But there was one
And
last time that we went, and I told the wife not to disturb it at all. But they're always up there in random places. It's strange.
Huh.
No footprints. You'd be able to see the footprints in the dirt.
Wow. I mean,
yeah, it's
I'd always heard of obviously like the fairy circles, the mushrooms,
Hmm.
but never just of rocks.
Hmm. And it's very, you can't, it's a very strange feeling going there at night. There's definitely something that used to be there. Well, back in the day, my uncle he found tons of arrowheads and axes and spears and we call them matates, and they're round rocks and they're for graining
Okay.
stuff like corn and all that.
Yeah.
But it used to be nothing but natives that used to live around there. But the Mexicans used to own it. Our family's been here forever. Mexicans used to own it, and my family that came from Spain purchased it from Mexico. And the Mexican government told my great great grandfather if the natives were to be around there or try to infringe on his lands to kill him, and he actually did kill
Mm.
some natives, and some natives are buried on the property somewhere.
Oh wow.
So it's just it has a different feel out there at night. It's at the foot of the Spanish Peaks, so maybe about a mile away. It's odd feeling.
Wow.
kind of amazing how you date back into history. Like you look back in history, like so your ancestors came from Spain, got this land. My ancestors came from Spain through Mexico,
Hmm.
got land here in Colorado, New Mexico. At one time, my family, the Pinos, owned all the land from like the Huerfano north to like Greeley. There's not is it Greeley or what's that little hippie town down there? Garland is it? What
Gardner.
is it? It's not Gardner.
Yeah,
Yeah, so from where the Huerfano to Gardner, they owned all that land at
yeah.
one
In my
time, and then
family,
it just got sold off.
according to Colorado, because our family is noted in the Colorado history museums, we used to own land as big as the size of Hong Kong.
Damn.
Oh wow.
Mm, so it's pretty vast.
And
But my
I have an
great great
ancestor.
grandfather fought on the side of the Mexicans, and he had his land stripped away, mostly all of it. But we owned a large chunk around there still. It's just not like it was because this land was all stripped from the United States government as he fought on the side of the Mexicans in the Mexican-American War. So,
Yeah.
So I know you guys are probably like, well, he's just had some anecdotes like now of oh, I felt some stuff. But after I graduated college, moved into a my art studio into a building in downtown Findlay, Ohio, and it's an old historic building, Main Street, looks as much as most old vintage, Main Street buildings. Uh, 3-story. From what we know, uh, the front half of the building, when it was originally constructed, bottom floor, just normal storefront kind of stuff. Uh, Second floor, office space that was like the original like Elks Lodge. And then the third floor was ballrooms for their events. So like 20-foot ceilings up on that third floor, big open rooms. Uh, Later on, they had added on to the back half of the building and kind of doubled the size, if not tripled it. Uh, More storefront level. Uh, Third floor was continuation of Elks Lodge, like ballroom space and meeting room space and whatnot. But the second floor, they had when they added that in, uh, and I'm sure it was probably some kind of extension of the Elks at the time, but it was little efficiency apartments for single moms and wayward girls. So they were little uh, 2-room spaces. There was a big double door built into the wall that you would open up that, had like they would have Murphy beds, fold out. Uh, Most of them had a little tiny, tiny side bathroom built off of them. And that were these accommodations. Uh, Over the years, they'd taken the Murphy beds out, taken the individual bathrooms out, converted them into just kind of office kind of use space. Still carpeted and whatnot, not updated by any stretch of the imagination. Uh, Beautiful spaces for an artist studio. And since they'd taken all the individual bathrooms out, uh, central on the second floor, uh, they had put in a men's and a women's room. And there's, only 2 stairwells up to the second floor. There's one off the front of the building, one about halfway down on the side, just straight up. So the doors at the street level locked, get in, walk up, and then it was just all artist studios. So there's about 16 artists up there at any given time, renting these studio spaces and working. And, we pretty much do whatever we wanted to in there. It was fantastic. But an old building. And we knew the
Where
building
where was this? Sorry.
Up in Findlay, Ohio. So
Findlay, Ohio. Okay.
yeah, it's on I-75. It's like, half hour south of Toledo. So, middle of, cornfields and whatnot. And, the town's grown over the years, but, when I was there, it was still around 40, 50,000 people, not a, a large town, small city kind of scenario.
And it used to be an Elks Lodge, or was currently an Elks Lodge at that time?
It did used to be.
Used to be. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it used to be originally when they constructed it.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so when I got my studio there, the third floor had long been closed, condemned. They kept it locked.
Mm.
The floors were just old and started to rot through in spaces and stuff.
Ooh.
But we also knew the building had some history. In the back half, on the third floor, there had clearly been a fire. The floor was scorched and warped in that back ballroom. So we knew something had happened in its history. But again, nobody thought anything of it. It's just now a big, empty, slowly decaying, dusty, filthy space. Uh, Everybody worked on the second floor in their own individual studios. Uh, so, all in all, you don't think too much about this building. One day I'm sitting there, it's a sunny summer's, like May, June, summer afternoon, like 2 o'clock, and I'm working in my studio. In my particular studio, there's the front half. Uh, there was a divider wall and offset, to one side, an arch cut doorway that, led into the second half of the studio where I had my you know, easel and whatnot. And I'd been painting for several hours, just really focused work. So it got to the point where, like, wow, I need to just back off of this and let my eyes take a break for a minute. Had the radio on, and I had a lounge chair back there. I had an old Barca lounger. Uh, so I just kicked back in the recliner for a minute, closed my eyes, and was not trying to sleep. It's literally the goal is rest my eyes for a minute before I continue working. They're just starting to scream a little bit from focusing a little too tight there for too long. So I'm just kicking back, relaxing, just listening to the music, just vibing. And the front door of my studio is open. Everybody, when they were up there, they would just leave their studio doors open, and other artists would come and freely visit one another and whatnot, see what everybody's up to. So kind of one big family scenario. So I'm just sitting there relaxing, listening to the music, and I hear, all these old wood floors everywhere. I hear this kid, carpeted, but it's just that indoor outdoor carpeting. I hear a kid running up and down the hall outside, and don't think anything of it. A couple minutes goes by, and I hear the kid run up and down the hallway and into my door and into the front half of the room, and immediately turn around and tear back out. Don't think anything of it. Kids being, little kids being kids. The sound of the running, I would have guessed probably like, 4, 5, 6, territory maybe. A few minutes later, I hear the kid tearing up and down the hall again, runs into the front half, hear him come into, the back half of my studio where I'm at. And I'm just eyes closed, just relaxing there, listening to the music. And I hear him tear up next to my chair, stop, pause for, a beat, kind of like, oops, guy's sleeping or whatever, tear back out. At this point, I'm like, okay, this is clearly somebody I know and know their kid, and their kid knows me. The next time the kid comes in, I'll see who it is. A few minutes later, I hear tearing back in. And as the kid's running in, and you can hear and kind of count their footsteps in the front half, and about the time the footsteps are getting to the arch, I open my eyes and I see a little blonde boy for about half a step into my room and just vanish in front of me.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, okay, maybe I blinked and the kid turned around and tore back out. Maybe I'm, my eyes are tighter than I thought. Maybe I had a long blink. I get up, look out in the hallway. There's no other artist, studio doors open. There's nobody out here. Okay, maybe I'm a little more, maybe I did doze off and, had dreamt something, but I'm like, I don't feel like I was just asleep. When you were just, you're waking up. I'm like, okay. And I checked both stairwell doors. They're locked tight. There was nobody else on that floor with me.
And
A couple weeks and even months go by. And one of the other artists that is about 3 doors down from me is up there one day, and I'm talking to her, and I just happened to mention, boy, I was a little creeped out not too long ago. I could swear there was a little boy running up and down the hall in here. And there wasn't. And she just turned and looked at me and she said, oh, I don't spend the night here anymore in my studio. Because she would often, paint halfway through the night and then just crash on her couch or whatever in her space. And she's like, I don't do that anymore. He creeps me the hell out. I said, are you talking about the little boy? And she said, no, not the little boy. He's fine. The old man creeps me the hell out.
Mm.
Oh,
And I'm like, what old man? She's like, oh, well, I'll be painting, sitting there painting on on the easel and catch out of the corner of my eye the old man standing in my doorway giving me the death stare.
Mm.
And she's like, that's happened one too many times. I will not spend the night there anymore.
so interesting story about that. Just kind of a reiteration of that. Well, it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm an elk. That's the reason I was asking what Elks Lodge it was. If you happen to have known the number or not, I kind of look it up. But our Elks Lodge, number 90, it's pretty old. I mean, number 90.
Hmm.
It's the second oldest Elks Lodge, I think, in the state of Colorado. But we have ghosts in our Elk Lodge, and it's like a three-story building. If you ever look, you can look it up online. You can check out, just type in Elks Lodge number 90, and you'll see the facade of the building. It's an older building, but um, the ghosts that we have they don't like women, and there might be a reason for that because the Elks used to not let women be members. You know, it
Yeah,
used to be a men's only club, strictly men only. That
yeah.
changed probably in the 60s, most likely. I can't remember when, but it started changing to allow women in. They're called Alkettes and everything, and they have their own little organization too within the
Alcats. Hmm.
yeah within our organization. We have the Alkettes, and they do a lot of crazy stuff. They do some cool stuff. But back in the day, we had we have it's like a four-story building, and the top story used to be rooms. They used to let people bring their girlfriends or wives to
Hmm.
their wives or girlfriends or ladies of the night, if you will, prostitutes to screw up there, and then stay. While when women go upstairs by themselves or go into the elevator, they get harassed all the time by
Mhm.
spirits. Spirits don't like them. So that's kind of interesting that you had a female tell you that the old man creeps her out and giving me the death stare. It was probably an old Elks member, to be honest,
Yeah.
not liking
Well,
her.
so time goes on, and at this point, I'm like, I'm definitely weirded out. The little boy, broad day. I'm just like, okay, who cares, little kid. She's telling me about the old man, and there were one or two other artists that kind of in passing, like they didn't want to admit it, but kind of like, yeah, we kind of had some run-ins. Yeah, we're not sticking around at night either. Uh, but a couple months go by, and again, it's just a sunny afternoon, and I'm up there working, doors open, and those two men's and women's bathrooms that they had put in, whenever they did the conversion, it was, you know, cheap and dirty. They did not design these for company. These were clearly just blue collar, barely functional bathrooms. But it was done old enough that, again, the stalls around the toilets were built with heavy, heavy, like inch ply. The door on that had put springs on them that were darn near garage door springs. So I mean, you had to put some force to open that stall door. You heard that, down the hall, you heard that spring stretch, and then that door slam back and whatnot. So I mean, you knew when somebody's in that bathroom. Uh, so I'm working, and all of a sudden, I hear the stall door open, slam shut, and then the toilet flush. And again, you're like, okay, older toilet plumbing, okay, sure, whatnot. But it occurred to me, wait a minute, I never heard anybody enter the building and come up either of those flights of steps. Again, this is an old building, wood stairs. They had those rubberized treads that were now like polished, smooth for years of use over them. But anybody walked up those steps, you heard that thump, 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 like walking up a bass drum. You knew when somebody entered or exited that floor. And it was occurring to me, I never heard a soul come in. So I, look out. There is nobody in this building. All the doors are shut and locked. All the lights are off. checked the doors to the stairwells. Those are locked, secured. And I'm like, again, maybe I just fooled myself. Went back to work. And sure enough, a little while later, again, heard one of those stall doors creak open, slam shut, and a toilet flush. And these
Jeez.
were only like a door down from me anyway. So easy to hear. So again, it's not like I'm straining going, did I hear something? No, I heard bathroom stall door open, slam shut, and a toilet flush. And the building was locked tight. So that was the around the time where I'm getting ready to move down south anyway. So that's kind of the end of my experiences in this particular building. After I left, I had some of the other artists called me and were telling me, yeah, here's the latest goings-ons after you left. Uh, Two artists one day were working that I knew them both well. One was working at one end of the hallway on one side, and one was in a studio space opposite end of the hallway on the other side. And they were both just in their studio pissing around. And one was on, just sitting there strumming on his guitar, messing. And he's like, yeah, I'm sitting there strumming on the guitar, and all of a sudden I see somebody in all white walk past the door. And he's like, I'm curious. I got up, glanced out the door to see who was up there. I mean, any artist that can obviously, reach out to anybody who walks into a big group studio space and make a connection. Hey, that might be a new patron. So, and he's like, yeah, I look down the hallway. There's nobody there. So he's like, huh, again, must have blinked or what, imagined it, whatever. Goes back on his way. Come to find out, talking to the other artist, this happened roughly at the same time. They just barely missed each other. She's down in her studio, and her studio space is the one space that is different from everybody else's. It is a completely square, single open room. For whatever reason, it never had the divider wall, or they knocked it out at some point. It's in the front original half of the building, so it has other storefronts adjoining, on the main street there. And because of that, she's on the second floor, and the building next to them adjoining was just a single story, had a restaurant in it. So the roof had all the kitchen vents and everything, blowing hot air. So her room only had up high a little, like a basement window, so that place got like 1,000 degrees in the summer. Could not get up there to crack the window. Not a big enough window anyways to really carry a breeze through. Plus you had kitchen vents blowing hot exhaust on it, on that wall all day. So, I mean, we called it jokingly, the Mexican prison, because it was just a miserable space to be in, always roasting. But she's in that space, and she is a photographer and a writer. So she's got metal and glass framed photo prints all the way around the space. And she's got at the back of the space facing the door a little writer's desk, and she's got a typewriter out, and she's writing away, typing away. And she's telling us, yeah, I was sitting there typing, and if you have any metal framed art or photos or anything, that if the temperature changes even slightly, that those metal frames, you hear them, kind of click and plink and whatnot as that, temperature differential, as the temperature changes in the room. So she's typing away, and behind her, one of the frames, does this little snap thing, with the temperature expansion. And then one on the other side, and then one on the other side, and other side, and other side, and other, slowly working its way up to the door.
Oh, geez.
And she said, by the time I realized something is happening, I looked up, and saw an all black figure walk past my door and then got up, nobody there. A few months after that, one of my buddies calls me up one day and he's like, yeah, word apparently about this building's been getting out. I was up working yesterday and I had a guy show up at the door and he's just like, yeah, I'm a ghost hunter locally. Would you mind if is there any way you could get me up on the third floor and I could have a look around? And my buddy happened to be one of the few people that did have, just for in case, a copy of the key to the third floor, which was normally completely lock and key. Again, condemned. Those floors are not in good shape. They didn't want people up there. And he's like, I didn't see any harm of it. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll let you up. Just be careful. The guy's like, yeah, no problem. So he let the guy up, came back to his studio, and he's like, 15 minutes later, this guy comes back down. And he's just like, so yeah, I was up there looking around, generally quiet. It's those old original tall windows, 20-foot ceilings, the original Elks Lodge windows, single pane. But, it's third floor in a relatively quiet small town. So pretty much all the glass is intact. You don't have windows knocked out or anything like that. So you hear a little bit of Main Street small town traffic, but, you don't hear a giant ruckus. It's quiet. It is behind glass, but you do hear Main Street traffic in the background a little bit. The guy went up there with a recorder and was looking around and asking the standard ghost hunter questions. Am I alone? Is there anybody with me? So on and so forth. So he does this thing for about 15 minutes and he comes back downstairs and he's talking to my buddy and he's just like, look, I was up there and in the one bathroom, weird enough, or after what you said about your Elks Club, maybe not. There was in the bathroom, and they had an old school clawfoot bathtub. Because how often are you at a ball where you need to take a nice bath in the middle of? But he said, everything's covered in dust, and he said, I was looking around and I looked up, like 7-8 feet up on the wall, small child's handprints in the dust.
Ooh.
And he said he made my buddy listen to his tape. And he gave my buddy a recording. So my buddy played it for me. I heard it too. So he's just like, playing it back for me. And he's just like, is there anybody here? Am I alone? What's your name? What do you want? And amongst that background noise of the main street, otherwise you don't hear anybody talking downstairs or anything like that. The building's pretty much empty for the day. Plain as day, you hear in that background noise a little boy say, keep the damn door shut. And he played it for me. I'm just like, yep, that's exactly what that sounds like. He didn't even have to tell me. I'm just, he's like, what did you hear? I'm like, I heard some little boy tell you keep the door shut. And he's like, yeah, that's what I heard. They tried to do a little bit of research on the building. And what they could find was at one point, there had been, as we knew, a fire in that back ballroom on the third floor. And there had apparently been 2 deaths. The records they could find, going through old newspaper and whatnot, would only identify as an old man or as a male, and a child. So the only thing that we could ever piece together and guess roughly, if we're talking something horrible happening involving a fire, was that some creepy dude had grabbed a kid, from one of the single moms downstairs, lured him up onto the third floor, whatever happened, and the old man tried to hide some crimes with a fire and, you
Hmm.
know, perished himself. That's the only thing we could kind of, spitball uh, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, is definitely an interesting building to work in because yeah, you'd go stretches of time of just I'm just here. It's a normal building doing my thing, and then all of a sudden out of
Something
left
would
field,
happen.
something weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
we've been at it for a long time. I mean, you had some great stories. I really
yeah,
appreciate
Yeah.
it. Sharon, we're gonna have to get you back on to do the videos where you could detect what's going
sure.
on with them. I tried a couple times on X. It's still down for me. So I don't know if you have anything going on with yours, Gerald, but I can't get
No,
back.
I think it's the same.
So
I do
we
want
really
to
appreciate
ask.
it. Thank you for
I'd
coming.
like to ask you guys a question, though, or we'll probably have to talk about this later. Maybe if some
Okay.
more shit develops. But have you heard about the Annabelle doll going on tour?
Yeah.
I haven't heard about
Yeah,
that.
that's freaking crazy. So the last play, well, one of the last places it was in Louisiana. They had that plantation catch fire, one of the oldest plantations down there, and 11 inmates escape after it left Louisiana. I
So
think it's
wait a
going to
minute. It
Texas
was
now.
there when those things happened?
It
Yeah.
was in the state.
Wow.
It, it was on tour apparently after the
Yeah,
Clintons passed away. Apparently, they've started selling off their collection because that if you've seen any of the movies, the was it Conjuring series? Is it Conjuring?
yeah, it's a Conjuring that's loosely based off of the Ed and Lorraine
Yeah,
Warren um exploits. But yeah, the Annabelle doll's like a little Raggedy Ann doll, and it's supposedly really freaking hot. Well, it's supposedly possessed by like a demon, and like there's been like tales of people like mocking it and then wrecking their motorcycle was one of the big ones. Some teen mocks it, touches it or something, and then shortly after he slams his tree into a motorcycle or just a tree. He slams his tree into a motorcycle and he slams his motorcycle into a tree. You know, like weird stuff like that's happened. And Ed never wanted that doll to leave that
yeah,
area, period. And now they're taking this doll on tour, apparently. I
So do
yeah.
guess
you
to
have
its
all
new
the
home.
places that it's going to go?
Yeah, you can look it up, the Annabelle doll tour, like tour in the US, and there's a few places that have it on here.
Yeah.
Where's it going originally? Or where's it gonna go?
Yeah, because apparently, like the Annabelle,
Uh,
like some of the artifacts that the Warrens collect or rescued from people, to end or contain, whatever. Uh, uh, from what I've seen, actual photos, of their home, a lot of those things were just loose on shelves and whatnot. But like the Annabelle doll, they kept that in
In
its own
glass.
glass case, like do not touch this even.
Hmm.
yeah,
So,
it's kind of wild. It's just to me, I thought about it. I wanted to bring it up earlier, but we're getting to the story stuff. I want to hear these, but I wanted to let you like ask you guys. We have to do a video on it. It's kind of interesting the fact that it left. It went to New Orleans or Louisiana, and then all of a sudden,
Just blazing
an
a
ancient
trail.
plantation, yeah, a
yeah.
plantation catches fire, and the 11 inmates escape. You
Hmm.
know, it was supposed to be going to Texas after that, and I don't know if it ever made it. My wife just told me it's back at the museum now.
Where it belongs.
Yeah,
If you went to Texas to the Tesla factory, how would you know if it's the doll or just things catching on fire?
yeah, no joke. You know, I don't know exactly where in Texas it went. I think San Antonio, Black Swan Inn, San Antonio.
Hmm.
I think is where it said it went. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd be taking a supposedly possessed doll to other extremely haunted places. It just sounds like bad juju, you know?
Well, no, those Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls always creeped me out just day one, anyways.
I almost bought one. I was driving downtown Pueblo, and one of our antique museum, or not our antique stores, they had one sitting there during Halloween. I was like, oh
Hmm.
man, I should buy that. I sent a picture of it to Adam.
No.
It's like, dude, check it out. There's Annabelle.
Wait, have you seen the memes where somebody you go around and you just leave an old doll on somebody's front porch with a note of "It's your problem now."
We should start doing that.
That would be fun, man. I'd be down to do that. It's your problem now.
And
Well,
another thing I was gonna say, I don't know if you guys heard, but the government came forward and they said that there's four type of aliens that exist. Have you guys heard that?
I saw a blip on it today when I was opening up my feeds,
Oh,
and then I just didn't
is that a
watch
new
anything.
recent release?
It was last week.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
I
I
So
heard.
they
haven't
said
either.
that the Greys exist, the Nordic aliens, the Mantis aliens, and also the reptilians are real.
Ah, so Hillary Clinton is a reptile.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I didn't realize that had a new release. I'd heard like I guess a while back somebody in like going before Congress or something had mentioned that there was like multiple types, but I didn't realize they had another like final
Yeah,
release or
it
something.
was like a confirmation.
All I
Okay.
saw was another blip on there talking about alien tech or alien weapons,
Hmm.
and I was gonna click it and I didn't. I was like, oh, we'll see what the heck this is. That's interesting.
Yeah, I just thought it would be pretty neat that I'd bring up. But
Yeah, check that out.
it's a pretty cool episode. I'll probably upload this one right away because I ain't gonna edit. I'm just gonna put it on straight. So, all right, thank you very much, Scott, for showing up. We definitely have to do a return. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely, that
Yeah,
was cool.
anytime.
Yeah.
Good talking to you guys.
Thank you everybody for watching.
See ya.